Hi, and welcome to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed. We're here with Jess Levens today. Jess, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been kind of something I've wanted to do for a while. I'm glad that you agreed. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I got to know you from doing several different projects with your press, and we obviously had a bit of a connection there, and you've given me some really good editorial feedback on some things. So I was really excited for a chance to get to come on here and actually, talk to you in person and not just through Twitter messages.
Exactly. It's so nice to meet in person, but also with you, I feel your work is great. I love it. I'm a huge fan of
Thank
what
you.
you do. Um, do you have you have a I just don't want to get the title wrong. Your book is not broken broken there you go. Yes, a break in the spine. I keep saying breaking bindings in my head, but yes, a break in the spine. Fantastic. I mean, how long did you work on that? How did that all come together?
So not really that long, if I'm being honest. I s- I've only been writing poetry seriously for a year. I started writing last January actually, and this was kind of this chapbook was a culmination of you know pieces that I had written over the past. Well, at that time, the book came out in October, so between January and September of last year, it was just pieces that I had written, and I tried to put them together in some sort of a coherent collection that went together. And initially, I had a much longer manuscript, and some of the stuff that I ended up cutting out of that manuscript, we ended up publishing in the fun little digital chapbook Lurk that
Mm.
we put together. But there were some things I didn't feel were quite right for this. So I wrote a bunch of stuff and kind of shopped it around a little bit and read over at Alien Buddha Press, which
Mm.
actually it was your recommendation to try them. He liked it and said he wanted to publish it, so we moved pretty quickly on it. My background is in design, and because of that, I had the book kind of already put together. The photo that's on the cover is actually my oldest son Daniel. We were out catching bullfrogs, and that was a picture I snapped, and it ended up
That's
being
great.
a good image for the cover. So we were able to get it together pretty quickly because most of the layout and everything had already been done. So and we've sold a whopping 31 copies so far. So very exciting. I my least favorite part of this entire process so far is having to market my own work. I hate it. I
Yeah.
absolutely hate it. And it's not because I don't think my work is good enough or anything like that. I'm pretty proud of my work, but I I hate marketing. It's
Yeah.
not it's not fun.
I understand that. I mean, I I'm very proud of the stuff I put out and that I do, but I don't want to encroach on people and force
Mhm.
them. I'm like that. I'm like, do it if you want kind of person. So whenever I marketing, if I'm like direct, like buy this, buy this, buy this, I get very uncomfortable with. But people
Yeah.
should buy your book. They should buy it. Lurk was so much fun. It was such a good idea. I remember I was on vacation when you sent me the idea, and I'm like, I'll tell
Mhm.
Tiffany because it was such a great idea. I'd like to know what inspired you to start. If you only started a year ago, what inspired this in you? What made you decide to go in this direction?
So so just a minute ago, I said my background is in design, and that's partially true, but my background is in really more generally communications. I started my career as a journalist in the Marine Corps, and I've always enjoyed writing. I've been pretty successful at it as a journalist, and this was probably around last not this past December, but December 2021. Me and my wife Jamie were watching the Durrells in Corfu on uh, Masterpiece Theater, and in one of the episodes, the mom quotes Dowson's poem Vitae Summa Brevis, and they're not long, these days of wine and roses, that poem. And I don't know, it hit me hard. And I thought I could write something, like that. Like I could try. And so I did. And the first, I think, real poem I wrote that I would consider a real poem is the very first poem in my book, Tides, and it's really short. But it's just kind of about, the brevity of life and that sort of thing. And I tend to be kind of seasonal, in my amount of gloom. So like that was a very wintry poem, but as you see, kind of going through my collection, my subject matter kind of brightens and dims with the time of year. But that was really what inspired me, and I started writing, here and there, and I actually early on got a lot of support, from a couple subreddits for, feedback on original poetry, and that was really helpful. And then I went to my local library, and they had this book right here,
Oh, all
which is from
right.
like the 1970s from some Harvard professor, and they actually were giving it away. It was on their free table, and I read it, and I was like, oh yeah, and it gave me a lot more look into the actual form of poetry and different styles of poetry. And as someone with a journalist background, that's something I really like. I like that there's structure. I like that there's rules. There doesn't have to be, but there can be, and I like that. And you see that in my work. I typically keep a really, really tight syllable count, really tight line length, that sort of stuff. In a break in the spine, there's a couple villanelles which were kind of a pain in the ass to write, if I'm being honest. But which is why I haven't written a sonnet yet. I've started a couple and then just gotten annoyed and scrapped them.
Yeah, and I have such attention deficit, and I'm not saying that like just throwing it out there. I actually do have attention ADHD,
No, no,
and
I do too. I literally do have it, so it can be tough.
so when I'm thinking about you doing that, and I'm like, that is, and the fact that you just said that you have ADHD, that's a miracle unto itself to be able to follow the form and the structure, and to really pay attention. It's very hard for me. I remember even in those, like when we were learning it in high school, and I had such a hard time limiting myself, not limiting, but like making sure I fit that pattern. It was very hard
Well,
for me.
see, I think for me, my ADHD might manifest a little bit differently because I find that having structure helps me stay on track, and that's why you will almost never see me writing prose, because if I don't have rules, if I don't have guardrails, I will go ape shit. And sorry, I don't know if I'm
You can
we'll
swear.
edit it.
Oh no, please. I have the mouth of a sailor, as my mom used to say when I was young. Do you have any literary heroes, people that you were inspired uh, by the Wine and Roses poem? What?
Sure. Yeah, and that actually got me, reading a lot more. I love the classics. As you can see by these super pretentious leather-bound books behind me. But so my favorite author is Herman Melville, hands down. Moby Dick is not my favorite book from him. That would actually be Typee, which is super interesting. It's semi-autobiographical. Him and a friend abandoned a horrible whaling voyage and got captured by a cannibal tribe, and it is
Oh,
wild.
wow.
Yeah, but I have read them, so they're not that pretentious. But I love old stuff like that, and so I really started reading a lot of Emily Dickinson, who is actually my hands down favorite poet. I love Emily Dickinson. Um, and I think hopefully some of my work, you can see a little bit of that. I'm a really big fan of the Transcendentalists as well. Emerson, I live really close to Concord, Massachusetts. So
Mm.
Emerson, Thoreau, Hawthorne, those are all writers I really enjoy reading. Uh, my all-time favorite book is actually Call of the Wild. I don't think it's the best book I've ever read, but I love Jack London's writing, and Call of the Wild is my just single favorite book. With poetry, I would say, I really do like Dickinson quite a bit. Um, More contemporary, I absolutely love Solmaz Sharif. Her writing is just so polar opposite her experience in life. She is, I believe, an Iranian American. I might be wrong, and if I am, forgive me, but I believe that that's what it is. And her poetry is written from, the perspective of kind of the other side. Like I'm a white Marine Corps veteran, American guy, middle class. Like I haven't had a whole lot of struggles. That it is what it is. And her writing is just so it's just so raw and honest that she doesn't need to use literary devices. Whereas it kind of messed me up for a little bit actually when I read her first collection, Look, because I just felt like after reading that, why is what I have to say even important?
Oh,
Like
yes.
it doesn't carry the same weight at all. And I've gotten over that, but you'll see, I'm chock full of clever literary devices, and sometimes people have something to say that has enough weight to it that they don't need to. So I like that because it's something that's totally different from me and my experience. Um, Another really good book I just read. I'm going to plug one of my Alien Buddha uh, poets, but this is Ghost House by Emily Butcher, and this is a fantastic little chat book. She unpacks a lot of trauma in here in I think a really healthy way, and it's a book that I think a lot of people can relate to, even if they don't share the same kind of trauma. But it's a good one. I would highly recommend it. It's a pretty fast read, but it's beautifully written.
Oh, that's great. And I'm glad you're telling us this because we always want to discover new people, like both authors that you just mentioned. I had no idea about. Now I will go out and I will take a look and
Here,
read
hold on
them.
one sec. So here is the other one, Look by
Okay,
Solmaz Sharif. I think this was from, Grey Wolf Press. But
great.
that and her second collection is called Customs, and both just like they'll knock you on your ass.
Oh, awesome. And how do you discover new things? Like where do you go for your
Twitter, honestly.
yeah. I honestly it's like opened up a whole world to me. I was never on Twitter before the press. I just didn't
Mhm.
do it. And then now that I'm on it and the people like yourself and others that I've met, it's been so enriching. It's made my life better. And I know it's not perfect. It's not good at all in some levels, but
Right.
it's been
No, but
great
we've been
for
able to build
lit.
a community, and it's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Now, is there a time in your life that you can recall before you even started writing when you realized that language had power for you?
Mm, yeah, I'm not sure if there's a specific time or not. I've always been drawn to the creative side of things, and that is directly from my father. He's probably looking down, really jealous that I got a chapbook published and he didn't. But that's what happens when you die before the internet is a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry that your dad passed. He was a writer as well?
Yeah, I mean, he fancied himself one for sure, and he was a very creative guy, and he had a lot of nice things that he wrote over the years, and most of it was in scribbled on note pages that are long lost and no one would ever be able to find or even read if they did find it. But yeah, he was definitely a really creative, a really funny guy, and I know I got a lot of I got a lot from him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, my dad's a writer. He wrote a little book after he retired. He didn't write anything really, but like little poems and little roasts for people. But then when he
Hmm.
retired, he wrote his little book about called We the We, where the it was the story of how little leprechauns came over in
Oh
suitcase
wow.
to immigrate with the immigrants to America. He's first generation Irish, so he's very still tied to that. So that was his little dream. But he was always like dabbling. I think that's kind of where I started to do it because my dad always did it. So I'm like, oh, that's what you
Hmm.
do at a party. You get up and you read poetry. That's what you do. That's what he always did. So now, do you have any
Yeah,
writing kryptonite that you deal with, like things that stop you from writing?
time, time, and time in real life. I would say, um, I which is why I've written almost nothing this year. You guys actually published the only thing I've written so far this year,
Mhm.
in the cold issue, and I wrote it specifically for that. But no, so I've got two boys. They're 11 and 9, and my wife Jamie here, and we've got dogs, and I work full time for the VA, and I'm in the very last semester of my master's degree at Northeastern, and life is just incredibly busy.
Dude,
And
dude,
so I,
let's stop there. Pause there. That's a big deal. A master's from Northeastern. That's a great. That's a great goal to have
oh,
and to achieve. I'm like, wait, with all the other stuff that you're doing, I'm really impressed because I know you haven't written a lot in the last so far this year, but the stuff you are writing is like went into the cold issue, which was a very competitive issue of the magazine of the press. We had a lot of people. So I'm
well, I was
congratulations.
determined because they denied me for the heat issue, and I was pissed about that.
Oh no, that's so funny. Oh well, congratulations. That's a lot, and that's incredible. I'm really impressed.
Thank
I'm
you.
feeling a little lazy myself now. That's
I
why.
I wish I could feel lazy. I am, and the older I get, the more and more my time is my most valuable commodity, and solitude comes at a premium at this point in life. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing is it's pretty rare that I have time to, sit down for, 2 or 3 hours straight and just bang out a poem or work on something like that. It's pretty tough. A lot of my writing gets done before the kids go to school or after the kids go to school and before I start work. Or at least a lot of my inspiration does. All of the poems in A Break in the Spine are they're about real experiences and places, and a lot of those places are uh, very nearby to where I live. And one of the biggest ways I find inspiration for poems is I like to go out and get lost. I like to go out and find something, like pre a pre-colonial cemetery, or you know things like that, or I guess not pre-colonial, but pre-revolutionary. And I'll take some pictures, which in Lurk, a lot of the pictures I took are actually pictures that I took on the scene of poems that are there. Um, and I take a notebook with me, and you know just jot down all kinds of chicken scratch about what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking, and then I come home, and if I'm feeling inspired enough, I'll get it banged out and actually put together, and then usually I will post it on one of the Reddit uh, subreddit forums to under a completely different pen name, and try and just get some good feedback, which I usually do from those communities. There's some really good writers and some people who know their stuff, so you can actually get really good specific poetry related feedback, not just like, oh, I don't like this, or
Hmm.
so that's kind of my process, and I'm just really struggling to find time to do that right now.
Hmm. No, I feel it. With the press, we do, my writing was never like a lot. Like I was never like a prolific writer and I never had to do
Hmm.
it. But when I get inspired, so my inspiration comes random, of course, randomly
Yeah,
at me at the weirdest times. And sometimes I will sit down and knock something out in like 2 hours. I gotta go. And then there are times of dry spell where I will write 4 sentences and be bored already. So it just really is so random for me. I love your meditate. It's like a meditative approach that it feels like to me. What you're doing, you're out, you're moving, you're walking, maybe you're doing something else, and it kind of comes to you because you might be in a state of flow, so your mind can kind of open to it. That's what it feels like to me when I hear
it
you say
does.
that.
I am a very I'm I'm my ADHD definitely manifests in hyper focus, and sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's not, because I'll spend 2 hours trying to find the perfect subtitle font for a poster when really I'm literally the only person who cares about it, you know. But other times it can help me sit down and bang out a poem. And when I write, I usually write pretty quickly. Um, I think on average, writing out a first, draft of a poem that's, maybe like 6 or 8 stanzas, it probably takes me, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And then I'll go through some revisions and that sort of thing. But when I'm in a good flow state, I tend to write really quickly.
That's really interesting. Now, did you think, do you think that any part of you informed the genre that you picked, or did the genre pick you? Like, did you seek out poetry, or is that just like come right to you? And that's all that was natural for you?
I think I think that poetry is a really natural fit for me. I like to get creative with language. I like to, as much as I like the structure of journalism, I also enjoy being able to kind of like break some of those rules a little bit. And you'll kind of see that in different instances where I'll make up an adverb out of a noun that doesn't exist, or I'll use words incorrectly on purpose sometimes, things like that. But I've always kind of gravitated toward it too, because it doesn't have to be long. I don't think I have the focus to write like a novel or anything like that. It's a bite-sized thing that I can do. I can love it. I can be creative, and I can be done. You know. And I think the other thing too is that I am an abysmally bad painter, and I've always been really jealous of people who are good painters. I actually took an art class for one of my electives last semester, and it was really difficult. I learned a lot from it, but it was hard.
Mhm.
And for me, I think poetry is a way for me to paint using the materials that I'm good at using.
That's really interesting. I do too admire painters, and I cannot paint to save my life. You'd be shocked. You'd come to my house. All my friends are artists. That's kind of how you know,
Mhm.
because my friends have painted. Like my entire house is filled with friends' art, which is pretty awesome. Because I do admire that, and it's something I personally have no talent in. It's my friend used to invite me to a craft night where she would have a bunch of people over, and I would just sit and just drink because I could not do any of it. Like I couldn't cut in a straight line. I can't paste
Oh no,
without
I'm
getting into
terrible.
it.
Anything that has to do with like folding or taping or gluing, or no, I'm terrible. I can do digital art all day long, and I'm pretty good at that. But
Mm-hmm.
anything that's actual making it with my hands is horrific, and that's what I like about poetry, though. I feel like it's a way. I think I have a way to paint with words that most people can't, and I think that that's something that you know. It, at least to me, it feels like my unique contribution to art.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very cool. So you had mentioned, um, you're working a 40-hour week and you're in Massachusetts. I'm a personal fan of Mass. Um,
I
do
love
you
it.
have, do you think where you live or grew up informed your writing?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, in one way, it's pretty clear in my writing that I love the history and the landscapes and that sort of thing of where I am. In a lot of ways, A Break in the Spine is a love letter to New England. And I'm not from here. I'm born and raised in Texas. I'm from a little town called Pflugerville, which is. Have you ever seen the TV show Friday Night Lights?
Yes, yes, yes.
That's my high school. That's where I'm from. Those are our uniforms. That's our stadium. That's literally my high school. That's where I'm from.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's where I grew up, and uh, and I love it. It's in the Austin area. It's a suburb of Austin, and I love it. I think Texas is doing a lot of not so great things right now, but there's a big part of big part of me that's always going to be tied to Texas,
Hmm.
and I love it. And so I guess what I'm saying is I'm a New Englander by choice, and for a lot of different reasons, but I think it definitely comes through in my writing. And we actually had moved to Tennessee um, back in 2014 and just moved back here in 2021. And Tennessee was nice. It was really pretty. But after a while, we really didn't care for the political landscape there. It was getting it was getting weird. It was getting really unenjoyable to live there, um, especially being someone who's a little more on the liberal side. We are a transracial adoptive family, and it was not a very comfortable place to live. And in one of my poems, actually, in the book, there's a poem called Ripavilla, which is about a plantation there that you can still go to and visit. And it was honestly, it was horrifying. So I think that where I am and where I've come from and where I've lived are all absolutely things that inform and shape my writing.
Yeah, that's amazing because I really believe that you were saying how your writing can be seasonal as well. Like that's with me. Like during certain times of the year, I feel almost like, nope, no inspiration. Let's live through this
Hmm.
winter. And then once summer comes, I am on fire. And I don't know. It's it's hard to describe. It's a literal shift in my thought process. Like I
Well,
cannot think.
I think for me maybe, and it's weird because winter in the north is actually my favorite season. I love it. Um, I just find different inspiration during that,
Mhm.
and I think a big part of it is because it is so nasty and dreary and cold outside. Although it's 55 degrees and sunny today here,
I know. We had that
well,
yesterday. I'm
while
like, what's
Texas is
happening?
in a blizzard, but it's wild. But yeah, and global warming's a hoax, right? But no, I think during that time I'm usually out by myself when I'm finding my inspiration, So I'm writing about a lot more introspective things and a lot more, just of the cold dead nature that's around me, right? But in the summertime, that's when I'm out with my family. That's when we're going to, town carnivals. That's when we're, me and my wife are taking, the very occasional just me and her going to the Cape, things like that. And so I get to find other inspiration because I'm not just alone during those times.
Interesting. As you're saying that about the doing things with your family, usually the summer season is the season that I'm slower because I'm a yoga instructor. People go, my private classes go on vacation.
Hmm.
So I have like days where I have nothing to do. And that's when I can
Yeah.
write because my
Oh,
winters are so
I'm
filled with
jealous of
craziness.
that.
Yeah. I'm like, they sit and just, okay, I'm going to write. I always call it summertime Kelly. My husband says it all the time. He's like, you're a different. Like I am so chill, I'm relaxed, I'm
Mhm.
happy, nothing gets to me. And then winter comes and I'm like, and I'm very active during the winter. I just walk the dog a ton, because I want to keep moving. So I'm mostly doing
Mhm.
physical things all winter long. Like my winter is physical. All I do is work and work and work out and teach and write and do the press. So it's just a very different
Yeah.
vibe. But that's interesting. I really should let you go. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on this. We'll do more. Anybody's welcome to come on as many times as they want to talk about whatever they want to, especially if you have something coming out. Do you have
Okay.
anything
Yeah,
on
for
the
sure.
horizon? Anything on the
No,
horizon? Okay, cool.
no. Buy my book.
But yes, and where can they buy it? And what is your like Twitter handles? Any place anybody wants to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Levensworks, just my last name and then WORKS. You can email me, levensworks@gmail.com. And my book is available on Amazon right now. And if you're local, you can get it at Aesop's Fable here in Holliston, Massachusetts.
Oh, it's
Uh,
awesome. A bookstore, real life bookstore.
yeah, I know.
That's
That's actually
awesome.
one of the cooler things is actually seeing it, on the book, the actual shelf at a store. That's pretty cool. And hopefully there'll be more of that to come as I find time to write more. But yeah, I'm so happy that I had a chance to talk with you, and thank you so much for having me on. And I definitely would love to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right.